Nigeria set to return to Eurobond market to fund budget 2020. And Google seals South Africa exit with $300 million asset sale. And expectations for South Africa's economy as President Cyril Ramaphosa delivers State of the Nation address on Thursday. Well, thank you for joining us on the program. I am BC Adebayo. We'll begin with the major markets in Africa, which were mostly positive at intraday, with South Africa's JSE gaining most by 1.19%. Here in Nigeria, the NSE was up 0.17%, and in Egypt, the index shared 1.12%. Over in Kenya, the market closed negative on Tuesday. And in the Middle East, most markets were pressured by a string of disappointing corporate earnings. The Dubai index shared 0.45%, while in Abu Dhabi, the index had lost about 0.15%. Also at intraday in Qatar, the index eased 1.42%, pulled down by a 4% plunge in industries Qatar, while Saudi's index gained 0.10%. Well, crossover now to Europe, where the markets traded higher today after China recorded its lowest number of new coronavirus cases since January. Here's Chelsea Delaney with more news coming from the European markets. It's good to see you, Chelsea. Now, European Union Parliament voted on Wednesday to finalize a free trade agreement with Vietnam, which could, of course, be the bloc's largest ever pact with the developing nation. How significant is this deal?
It's significant both symbolically and financially. So Vietnam and the EU already do about 50 billion euros in trade every year, but this is expected to add about 25 billion euros a year in trade turnover between the EU and Vietnam. Most of that's going to be coming from Vietnam. So Vietnam could be exporting about 15 billion more in euros to the EU every year. But the EU will also benefit by seeing an increase in exports to Vietnam as well, as this deal is expected to remove about 99% of tariffs from the trade between the two countries and the country in the bloc. But this is also very important symbolically because obviously there's a huge wave of protectionism happening around the world right now, especially in terms of trade, the U.S.-China trade war, things like that. So this move on the EU's part to strike free trade deals with other countries is very important to sort of signify that it is open to free trade.
All right, Chelsea, Google is facing off against the European Union in a three-day trial in Luxembourg, and that's over the search engine's appeal of a 2.4 billion euro fine for anti-competitive behavior. What will the EU court decision mean for the bloc's broader tech crackdown?
This is supposed to be a really important case for the EU because it novel application of antitrust law that was really brought into question. This case was decided in 2017. The EU fined Google for basically favoring its own results over smaller competitors in its search results. So, but antitrust regulators hadn't really dealt with a question like this before, where a platform operator like Google was really favoring itself and its results. So how the EU court of the fine is expected to be quite significant for the EU's other antitrust cases, because it's also considering other cases, taking other action against Google, but also other search engine platforms, other content aggregators like Yelp, for this same self-preferential dealing and anti-competitive behavior. So if their fine is overturned by the EU court, that could really be a problem for the EU regulators as they pursue similar cases going forward.
Well, let's talk about Wall Street Journal's reports that Chinese telecom equipment maker Huawei can secretly tap into mobile phone networks through backdoors meant for law enforcement as the U.S. ramps up its efforts to persuade allies to exclude Huawei from their networks. Is Washington's pressure campaign working at all?
It seems to be having mixed results so far. Obviously, this is a pretty explosive allegation. Huawei is denying that it uses this backdoor, but the existence is, and that has been confirmed by U.S. officials publicly, is yeah, it's a big deal. But most countries that the U.S. is putting pressure on have not really ceded to the pressure yet. So the U.K. Last month came out and said that they were not going to exclude Huawei from their 5G build-out, which is what the U.S. really wants, is a blanket ban on Huawei's equipment being used in these 5G build-outs around Europe and the U.K. as well. And then the EU and Germany also followed suit and said that they also would not seek a blanket ban on Huawei. And yesterday, Germany sort of came out and affirmed that stance when they put out a position paper, the CDU, Angela Merkel's party, and indicated that they would allow Huawei to be included in the 5G network, in part because Huawei is already a big part of networks here in Europe, and it would be kind of difficult to exclude them at this point. But the U.S. is certainly continuing to put pressure on these countries.
Many thanks, Chelsea. Do enjoy the rest of your day.